on amlodipine or lisinopril, three forgotten teas that grandmothers used to control blood pressure. You know that feeling when you wake up in the morning, swing your legs over the side of the bed, and for just a second everything feels fine? And then you stand up and that little rush hits you. That slight dizziness, that heaviness behind your eyes. Maybe your ankles are a little puffy, or your fingers feel tight, like someone inflated them overnight. And you walk to the bathroom, you open that medicine cabinet, and there they are. Your pills. Maybe it's amlodipine, maybe it's lisinopril, maybe it's both. And you take them because your doctor told you to, and you trust your doctor, and those pills are doing real work inside your body. But here's what's been sitting in the back of your mind for a while now. You take them every single day, and your numbers are still not where they should be. Or maybe they are, but you're dealing with that dry cough that won't go away, or that ankle swelling, or that fatigue that makes 3 in the afternoon feel like midnight. And you wonder, is there something else I could be doing alongside this medication? Something natural, something safe, that could help my body do more of the work on its own. I'm Dr. William, and I've spent the better part of 2 decades researching the intersection of ancestral nutrition and cardiovascular health. And what I'm going to share with you today are 3 teas, real teas, that your grandmother or your great-grandmother almost certainly had in her kitchen. Teas that have been used for generations to support healthy blood pressure. Not as replacements for your medication, never that, but as powerful, research-backed allies that work through completely different mechanisms than your pills do. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly how each one works inside your blood vessels, exactly how to prepare them for maximum benefit, and exactly how they fit alongside what your doctor has already prescribed. Before we dive in, I want to ask you something. Do me a favor and drop a comment below telling me what blood pressure medication you're currently on and how long you've been on it. Not for medical advice, I can't do that, but because I read every comment and it helps me make better videos for you. And while you're down there, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. I put out new research like this every week, and I don't want you to miss the one that could change your numbers. All right, let's get into this. Here's what most people don't understand about blood pressure. And I'm not blaming you, because most doctors don't have time to explain this in a 15-minute appointment. Your blood pressure isn't just one problem, it's at least 3 problems happening at the same time. The first is your blood vessels losing their ability to relax. They get stiff. The smooth muscle in the vessel wall forgets how to let go. The second is inflammation inside the vessel lining, the endothelium. That thin layer of cells that's supposed to produce nitric oxide, which is your body's natural blood vessel relaxer. When that lining gets inflamed, nitric oxide production drops, and now you've got stiff pipes and no lubricant. And the third problem, the one almost nobody talks about, is oxidative stress damaging the kidney's ability to properly regulate sodium and fluid balance. Your kidneys are the master regulators of blood pressure. And when they're under oxidative assault day after day, they start holding on to sodium they should be releasing, and your blood volume goes up, and that's more pressure on walls that are already too stiff. Now, amlodipine works on that first problem. It's a calcium channel blocker. It helps the smooth muscle in your vessel walls relax. That's a good thing. Lisinopril works on a different pathway entirely. It's an ACE inhibitor. It blocks an enzyme that makes a hormone called angiotensin II, which is one of the most powerful vessel constrictors in your body. Also a good thing. But neither of them directly addresses the inflammation in the endothelium, and neither of them directly repairs the oxidative damage to the kidneys. They manage the downstream effects. They don't fix the upstream causes. And that's where these 3 T's come in. Because what our grandmothers knew instinctively, and what modern science is now confirming study by study, is that certain plants contain compounds that work on those upstream causes. The inflammation, the oxidative damage, the nitric oxide deficit, things your pills weren't designed to do. The first tea is hibiscus, and if you grew up in the American South, or if your family came from Mexico or the Caribbean or West Africa, you already know this flower. You might know it as agua de Jamaica. You might know it as bisap. You might know it as sorrel, the deep red kind your grandmother made at Christmas in a big ceramic pitcher that sat on the counter, turning the water the color of rubies. I remember hearing stories from families in Louisiana and East Texas, where women would go out to the garden in late summer, clip those fat, fleshy callus off the plant, the dark red pods that look like little lanterns, and they'd bring them inside in their apron and drop them into a pot of boiling water. The kitchen would fill with this tart, almost cranberry-like aroma, and the water would turn crimson in minutes. They'd add a little raw cane sugar, maybe a squeeze of lime, and that was the family's drink for the week. They didn't call it medicine, they called it refreshment. But the women who drank it regularly, the ones who had a glass every morning and every evening, they were the ones whose doctors kept saying, "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." Now here's what science tells us about why that worked. Hibiscus sabdariffa, the species that makes that deep red tea, contains a class of compounds called anthocyanins. These are the same pigments that give blueberries and red cabbage their color, but hibiscus is particularly rich in a specific anthocyanin called delphinidin, along with organic acids including hibiscus acid and hydroxycitric acid. Here's what these compounds do inside your body. First, they act as ACE inhibitors. Yes, the same mechanism as lisinopril. A study published in the Journal of Nutrition in 2010 by researchers at Tufts University took 65 adults with mildly elevated blood pressure and gave half of them 3 cups of hibiscus tea per day for 6 weeks. The hibiscus group saw an average drop of 7 points in systolic blood pressure compared to placebo. 7 points from tea. Another study out of the University of Guadalajara found that hibiscus extract was comparable to a 25 milligram dose of captopril, which is another ACE inhibitor in the same family as lisinopril. But here's where it gets really interesting. Unlike pharmaceutical ACE inhibitors, hibiscus also acts as a natural diuretic. It helps your kidneys release excess sodium and fluid without depleting potassium, the way many prescription diuretics do. Research published in the Journal of Ethnopharmacology showed that hibiscus increased urine output and sodium excretion while actually sparing potassium. That's a significant advantage because low potassium can actually make blood pressure harder to control. Now here's how to prepare it for maximum benefit, and this part is critical because most people get it wrong. You want dried hibiscus calices, not hibiscus tea bags from the supermarket. Those tea bags have been processed and often blended with other herbs that dilute the active compounds. You want the whole dried flowers. You can find them at any Latin grocery store. They're sold as Flor de Jamaica, and they're inexpensive. Take 2 tablespoons of dried hibiscus calices and put them in a glass or ceramic vessel. Pour 2 cups of water that has just come off the boil, around 200 degrees Fahrenheit, not a rolling boil, slightly below that. Let it steep for a full 15 minutes, not 5, not 8, 15. The anthocyanins need time to fully extract, and the concentration difference between a 5-minute steep and a 15-minute steep is dramatic. Strain it. You can drink it warm or let it cool to room temperature. Drink 1 cup in the morning with breakfast and 1 cup in the evening with dinner. Do not add sugar. If you need to soften the tartness, add a thin slice of fresh ginger or a small squeeze of lemon. The vitamin C in the lemon actually helps stabilize the anthocyanins so they survive your digestive tract better. Consistency matters more than anything here. The Tufts study saw results at 6 weeks of daily consumption. This is not a one-time fix. This is a daily practice the way your grandmother did it. A glass every morning, a glass every evening, day after day after day. And I need you to pay special attention to the second tea, because this is the one that most people have never even considered, and it works through a mechanism that's completely different from anything your medication does. The second tea is olive leaf tea, and this one takes us to a different part of the world entirely. If you've ever driven through southern Italy, or the hills of Greece, or the coast of North Africa, you've seen those ancient olive groves, trees that have been standing for hundreds, sometimes 1,000 years. Gnarled trunks thick as a man's torso, silver-green leaves flickering in the Mediterranean sun. Everyone knows about olive oil, but what almost nobody in America knows is that for centuries, the people who lived among those groves didn't just press the olives, they picked the leaves. In rural Crete, in the hill villages of Calabria, in the Kabylie region of Algeria, grandmothers would collect olive leaves, dry them in the shade, and brew them into a bitter, golden green tea that they drank daily. They called it the tea of long life. In the 1850s, a British physician named Daniel Hanbury documented that olive leaf extract was being used to treat fevers throughout the Mediterranean, noting that populations consuming it regularly had remarkably low rates of what he called diseases of the heart and blood. It wasn't until the late 20th century that we began to understand why. The primary active compound in olive leaves is called oleuropein, and its concentration in the leaves is actually significantly higher than in the oil itself. Oleuropein does something remarkable inside your cardiovascular system. It increases the production of nitric oxide by protecting the enzyme that makes it, endothelial nitric oxide synthase, from oxidative damage. Remember what I said earlier about the endothelium getting inflamed and losing its ability to produce nitric oxide? Oleuropein directly addresses that problem. It shields the machinery that makes your body's natural vessel relaxer. A randomized controlled trial published in Phytomedicine in 2011 compared olive leaf extract to captopril in patients with stage 1 hypertension over 8 weeks. The results were striking. Olive leaf extract produced a mean reduction of 11.5 points in systolic blood pressure and 4.8 points in diastolic. Captopril produced 13.7 and 6.4. The difference between the two was not statistically significant. Let me say that again. The olive leaf performed statistically on par with a prescription ACE inhibitor, and the olive leaf group had an additional benefit that the drug group did not. Their triglyceride levels dropped significantly. That's because oleuropein also activates a pathway called AMPK, the same metabolic switch that gets activated during fasting and exercise, which helps your body burn fat more efficiently and reduce the inflammatory load on your blood vessels. But there's another compound in olive leaves that doesn't get enough attention, and that's hydroxytyrosol. This is one of the most powerful natural antioxidants ever measured. Its oxygen radical absorbance capacity is higher than green tea catechins, higher than resveratrol, higher than vitamin C. And hydroxytyrosol has a particular affinity for kidney tissue. It accumulates in the renal cortex and helps protect the kidney's filtration units, the nephrons, from the oxidative damage that impairs their ability to regulate sodium. This is that third problem I mentioned earlier, the one that almost nobody addresses. Olive leaf tea works on the kidneys in a way that supports their natural sodium-regulating function, which is fundamentally different from forcing sodium excretion the way a loop diuretic does. Here's how to prepare it properly, and again, the details matter enormously. You want dried olive leaves, preferably from organic sources, because conventionally farmed olives are heavily sprayed, and you do not want pesticide residue concentrating in your tea. You can find dried olive leaves online or at Mediterranean specialty shops. Some health food stores carry them. Take 1 tablespoon of dried crushed olive leaves and place them in a teapot or French press. Pour 1½ cups of boiling water, full boil this time, 212 degrees. Olive leaves are tougher than hibiscus, and the oleuropein is bound within the leaf's cell walls, so you need the full heat to break them open. Cover it and let it steep for 10 minutes. The taste is bitter, earthy, with a faint peppery finish. It's not sweet, and you shouldn't try to make it sweet. If you find the bitterness difficult, add a small piece of dried licorice root to the steep, about ½ inch. The glycyrrhizin in the licorice root rounds out the bitterness naturally. But be cautious with licorice root if you already have very high blood pressure, because glycyrrhizin in large amounts can raise blood pressure on its own. A small piece for flavor is fine, a handful is not. Drink 1 cup in the mid-morning, at least 2 hours after taking your medication, and 1 cup in the mid-afternoon. The spacing from your medication is important, and I'll explain why in the safety section later. Now, the third T is the one that surprised me most in my research for this video because I always associated it with something entirely different. And when I dug into the data, I realized we've been overlooking one of the most accessible blood pressure supports that exists. The third T is chamomile, and I know what you're thinking. Chamomile? That's a bedtime tea. That's what you give a child with a stomachache. How could chamomile possibly affect blood pressure? And I understand the skepticism because chamomile has been so thoroughly domesticated into a gentle, sleepy time cliche that we've forgotten what it actually is. But let me take you back. In the 1930s and 1940s, in Appalachian communities and Midwestern farm families, chamomile wasn't a sleep aid. It was a daily health tonic. Women grew it in kitchen gardens, those little white and yellow flowers that smell like apples and honey, and they brewed it strong. Not the pale golden water you get from a paper tea bag at a hotel. They made it dark, concentrated, almost the color of light amber, and they drank it after every meal. When researchers from the National Institutes of Health went into those communities in the 1970s to study their surprisingly low rates of cardiovascular disease despite high-fat diets and hard physical labor, they noted the chamomile consumption but didn't connect it to the cardiovascular outcomes at the time. It took another 30 years for the science to catch up. Here's what we now know. Chamomile contains a flavonoid called apigenin that has direct effects on the vascular system. Apigenin inhibits an enzyme called NADPH oxidase, which is one of the primary generators of superoxide radicals inside blood vessel walls. Superoxide radicals are the molecules that destroy nitric oxide before it can do its job. So if you think of nitric oxide as the signal that tells your blood vessels to relax, superoxide is the static that jams that signal. Apigenin turns down the static. A study published in Molecular Medicine Reports in 2015 demonstrated that apigenin improved endothelial function and reduced arterial stiffness in animal models of hypertension. And a 2020 study in the European Journal of Clinical Pharmacology examined chamomile consumption in elderly adults and found that those who drank chamomile tea daily had significantly lower systolic blood pressure than matched controls, with an average difference of 5.2 millimeters of mercury. But here's where chamomile does something that neither hibiscus nor olive leaf does, and this is crucial for anyone on blood pressure medication. Chamomile is one of the most potent natural cortisol modulators we know of. Cortisol, your stress hormone, is one of the most overlooked drivers of high blood pressure, especially in people over 55. When cortisol stays elevated, it tells your kidneys to retain sodium, it stiffens your blood vessel walls, and it increases your heart rate. It's like stepping on the gas pedal and the brake at the same time. Your medication is trying to relax the vessels, and your cortisol is trying to tighten them. And guess what makes cortisol spike? Poor sleep, anxiety, pain, loneliness, all things that become more common as we age. Chamomile's apigenin binds to GABA receptors in the brain, the same receptors targeted by anti-anxiety medications like benzodiazepines, but with a much gentler, non-addictive effect. It lowers cortisol by calming the central nervous system, which removes one of the hidden upstream drivers of resistant hypertension. In my experience, this is why some people's blood pressure won't come down even on 2 or 3 medications. The cortisol is fighting every pill they take. And a strong cup of chamomile twice a day can be the missing piece that finally lets the medication do its full job. Now, the way to prepare chamomile for blood pressure support is different from what most people do, and this matters. Forget the tea bags. Those tea bags contain chamomile dust, the lowest grade of the herb, and they deliver a fraction of the active compounds. You want whole dried chamomile flowers, German chamomile, Matricaria chamomilla. You can find them in bulk at health food stores or online herb shops. Take 2 full tablespoons of dried chamomile flowers and put them in a cup. Pour 8 ounces of water that's just below boiling, around 195 to 200 degrees. And here's the step that makes all the difference. Cover the cup. Use a saucer, a small plate, anything that traps the steam. Apigenin is semi-volatile. If you leave the cup open, some of it evaporates with the steam and you lose it into the air instead of drinking it. Cover it, steep for 12 full minutes, then strain. The resulting tea should be a rich golden color, not pale yellow. If it's pale, you didn't use enough flowers or you didn't steep long enough. Drink 1 cup 30 minutes after lunch and 1 cup 1 hour before bed. The evening cup serves double duty because it lowers cortisol and improves sleep quality, and better sleep independently reduces blood pressure the next morning. There is a beautiful compounding effect here. The chamomile lowers cortisol, which improves sleep, which further lowers cortisol, which lets your medication work better, which brings your numbers down, which reduces anxiety about your numbers, which lowers cortisol even further. It's a virtuous cycle, and it starts with a cup of tea. If you're finding this helpful, take a moment right now to share this video with someone you love who's dealing with blood pressure issues. That person who you always worry about, the one whose numbers are always a little too high. Send it to them. It could make a real difference in their life. Let me tell you about someone I'll call Margaret. Margaret is 68 years old, a retired school librarian from Asheville, North Carolina. She came across information about these teas after being on Lisinopril for 11 years and Amlodipine for 3. Her blood pressure had been hovering around 142/88, even on both medications. Her doctor was talking about adding a third drug, a diuretic, and Margaret was not happy about it. She was already dealing with that persistent dry cough from the Lisinopril and the ankle swelling from the Amlodipine, and the idea of adding another medication with another set of side effects felt like giving up on the possibility that her body could do more on its own. Margaret started with hibiscus tea, 2 cups a day, morning and evening, prepared the way I described with the whole dried callus and the 15-minute steep. After 3 weeks, she added olive leaf tea in the mid-morning and mid-afternoon, and after a month of that, she added chamomile after dinner and before bed. She kept a blood pressure log the entire time, which I always recommend. In the first 2 weeks, she noticed nothing dramatic. Her numbers fluctuated the way they always did. But by week 4, she started seeing mornings where her systolic was under 135 for the first time in years. By week 8, her average had come down to 128/79. When she went back to her doctor and showed him the log, he was surprised and pleased. He didn't take her off her medications, and Margaret didn't ask him to. But he did say that adding a third drug was off the table for now, and he said something that stuck with her. He said, "Whatever you're doing with the teas, keep doing it, because your numbers haven't looked this good since 2018. Margaret told me later that what changed wasn't just her blood pressure. She was sleeping better. The cough was less bothersome, possibly because the lower overall blood pressure meant the lisinopril was working against less resistance. Her ankles were less swollen, and she felt, for the first time in years, like she was doing something for her own health instead of just swallowing pills and hoping for the best. That feeling of agency, of partnership with her own body, was worth as much as the numbers. Now I need to talk to you about something important before you go buy any of these teas, and please do not skip this part. If you are on blood pressure medication of any kind, whether it's amlodipine, lisinopril, losartan, metoprolol, hydrochlorothiazide, or anything else, you need to understand that these teas are not harmless little beverages. They contain real bioactive compounds that can interact with your medications. Hibiscus has ACE inhibiting properties. If you're already on an ACE inhibitor like lisinopril, adding hibiscus on top of it could theoretically push your blood pressure too low, which is dangerous. That's why monitoring is essential. Olive leaf extract can enhance the effect of calcium channel blockers like amlodipine, and in some people, it can affect the way the liver processes certain medications through the cytochrome P450 enzyme system. Chamomile can increase the sedative effect of certain medications and may interact with blood thinners like warfarin because it contains small amounts of coumarin. Here's what you do. You tell your doctor. You print out this information if you need to. You say, "I want to add these 3 teas to my daily routine. Here's what they are, here's what the research says, and I want you to help me monitor my numbers while I do it." Any good doctor will respect that. Any good doctor will say, let's check your blood pressure more frequently for the first month and make sure we're not overshooting. And if your doctor dismisses you without looking at the evidence, find a better doctor. You deserve a partner, not a gatekeeper. Start with one tea at a time, not all three at once. Give each one 2 to 3 weeks before adding the next. Keep a daily blood pressure log, morning and evening. And if your numbers drop below 110/70 consistently, call your doctor because you may need a medication adjustment downward, and that's a good problem to have. Here's what I want you to take away from everything we've talked about today. Your blood pressure is not a single problem with a single solution. It's a system under stress from multiple directions: vessel stiffness, endothelial inflammation, oxidative damage to the kidneys, and cortisol-driven sodium retention. Your medications address some of those pathways brilliantly, and you should keep taking them as prescribed. But there are upstream causes that your pills were never designed to reach. And 3 simple teas: hibiscus for its natural ACE inhibiting and potassium-sparing diuretic action, olive leaf for its endothelial protection and kidney antioxidant support, and chamomile for its cortisol-lowering and nitric oxide-preserving properties, can work alongside your medications to cover the gaps. This is what your grandmother understood, without needing a clinical trial. She knew that the ruby red agua de Jamaica cooled the body. She knew that the bitter olive leaf tea kept the elders strong. She knew that the golden chamomile settled the mind and the heart at the same time. She didn't have the vocabulary of nitric oxide synthase or NADPH oxidase, but she had generations of observation that the research is finally catching up with. Here is your plan for this week. Step 1. Find a source for whole dried hibiscus flowers and start with 1 cup tomorrow morning. Step 2. After 2 weeks, source dried olive leaves and add a mid-morning cup. Step 3. After another 2 weeks, add chamomile flowers, 2 tablespoons steeped covered for 12 minutes, once after dinner and once before bed. Step 4. Keep a written blood pressure log, 2 readings per day, same arm, same time, sitting quietly for 5 minutes before you measure. Step 5. Bring that log to your doctor at your next appointment and have the conversation. Now, in my next video, I'm going to tackle something that affects nearly everyone on blood pressure medication, and almost nobody talks about it. It's the connection between your blood pressure and your magnesium levels, and why the form of magnesium you take matters more than whether you take it at all. Most people are supplementing with the wrong form, and it could be why their numbers won't budge. You're going to want to see that one. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. I'll see you there.